Okay, so welcome back. Welcome to our final discussion to wrap up this inspiring research networking day of the 20th edition of CDM Festival. In your introduction, Christoph, you already mentioned the ambiguous notion of persistence, and this is what we always try in our festival themes, in the festival topics, to find a word that is not only positive and that is not only negative and that has not one clear connotation, but that brings a lot of various notions. And persistence, as you already said, is not only the strong and empowering resistance, but also some sort of stubbornness or maybe dogmatic conservative position, and well, we just try during these 10 days to examine and to see and to talk about different ways of persisting, a persistence of changeability, actually, a persistence of difference, of hybridity, and how to resist these persisting forces, the persisting fascist and fundamentalist forces we are facing right now. And actually, after this day, in an era of rebuilding borders and re-empowerment of fascist ideologies, I was really happy to see that there's a growing transdisciplinarity among young researchers from all over Europe that presented today. It's not a rare position, actually, because nobody is bound to one discipline today anymore. All of the speakers today, and the three of us, and actually all the people I know at universities by now, define themselves as transdisciplinary, not only between different disciplines, but between artistic practice and research and all sorts of activities. So this is something I found very empowering and hopeful today, to see that there's a lot of activity in transferring boundaries, in cross-disciplinary thinking, and connecting, and collective speculating, and yeah, well, maybe we can wrap up our 3 modules or pose bigger questions, and then I would like to encourage not only the participants of this day, but the public and the audience as well, to take part in this discussion. The module 1 was posing the questions, ecological questions, like how can nature persist in the era of the Anthropocene, and how can humans connect with nature differently? And I got the feeling that that persistence had the notion of survival more than of resistance in this panel. So the persistence of mankind and the persistence of the earth, nature, and yeah, while facing this really rapid development of technology. And I think we had that in the second panel as well, the big question of the development of technology, whether we should embrace this development or whether this is something we should be critical about. Maybe, Christoph, you want to wrap up your module? What do you think about your module?
I don't want to wrap up my model, but still, yeah, I think what came to my mind was when I listened to the presentations of Model 2, was what John Fiske said about 25 years ago, or no, 30 years ago, resistance through knowledge, that came to my mind, because I don't have a clue about lots of the things that were said there. So I'm not a programmer, and I'm not even a musician, but I thought like, okay, I felt like in Module 2 it was a bit of kind of resistance through competence, through knowledge. That came to my mind. And second, which is not special to my module, but as you said, Dalia, yes, we are all, to a certain degree, transdisciplinary, but that's us, you know, and that's not the mainstream at the German universities. I see a big difference between art schools and music schools and universities and all the other academies we've got, which is fair enough, which is good. But if you look at popular music studies, for example, may it be media studies, sound studies, economics, etc., it's still very, very small. There's 2 or 3 professorships in the whole of Germany. So when we talk about transdisciplinarity here, it's not privileged. You know, we're on the one side, we're in a bubble and we all seem to agree, which is very easy. Yeah, we all have to work together in teams, etc. But next week, if I'm going to go to my dean or to my president, they're quite open at Paderborn University as it is a kind of a young, and I would finally say left-wing university. But then again, if I ask for bigger teams with students or money, you know, if it comes to money, maybe it's a smart university. Yeah, they smile at you and say it's great, popular music studies, go on, but don't expect any money. You know. So coming back to the module, when I listened to these fascinating presentations, all of them, all the 3 modules, but all of the 3 modules at this point, due to capacity, to competence, and to money, wouldn't have any chance at our department, to be honest. Well, that's not positive, isn't it?
No, I was positive enough, so.
I have
Okay.
Yeah, so if I want to wrap up the last one, the 3rd module, and I want to connect it with the program of the festival or with the topic of the festival, I would say that the persistence of the discussions, of the discourse is very important, because we have to follow up. Even there has been a lot of things, or like a lot of things happened in research, like changing perspectives or going to the direction of talking about, for example, electronic music and from the female perspective and like female identified musicians and so on. But it's still not enough, so we have to go forward and we have to push it forward, and then more discussions on that, and then it can change. And also in the first presentation of the module, Gillian also talked about it, that the perspective of the research itself is also super problematic, because as we talk about like different cultures, like the Middle Eastern cultures and so on, for us like Europeans or like North American perspective, it's difficult to point there. So the research has to change, and there's still a lot to do, and I think this kind of discussions, what we are doing today, can help a little bit, but there's still things to do there, but I'm still optimistic. It's going to the right direction, I hope at least. So I'm more optimistic than you.
I'm not pessimistic. I just want to provoke. You know, I want to say that it's good that we're all here and that you are there, and that it may be students or artists or whatever, researchers or even professors. But I think there's a lot of work to do, and only we can do the work.
Yeah, well, that's why we are here. That's what we are here for, and that's why we want to persist another 20 years at the CDM Festival. I had the same feeling, actually, at the 3rd module, that it's more about persisting problems that we know very well, but that are still going on. There's a lot of work to do, and the problem with this perspective, the European perspective, observing other cultures, it's an old problem, from the ethnological research, actually. And we had the same problem in the first module, where Aladdin proposed his bee project with observing bees. This is actually the same problem, like how much are you interfering into the bee culture with your research? What can you tell us about the transdisciplinarity or the crossing boundaries at the University of the Arts? Because this is it's a completely different structure, and different system.
Yeah. I mean, we have a couple of research groups which are like heading there, but For me, transdisciplinarity would also mean that we involve TU, the technical university, for example, and we would have a group of people or like research groups together with computer scientists, for example, a person from natural sciences, someone else would be also there, an artist, importantly, also a humanities scholar, and so on. So that would be for me the transdisciplinary research in this sense. But we know that these kind of groups are like hardly existing, let's say, especially not in Germany. There are a couple of maybe, but it's getting there. There are, as mentioned, some of the research groups are doing, and also we have a research together with the technical university, so it's getting there, and the artistic point of view is also getting more and more important. For example, at the Flusser Archive also we have an artistic residency together with Transmediale. We do that for like 6 or 7 years already, and that's how we want to also involve that also artistic research in this sense, which has also of course a lot of negative connotation and positive connotations too, so I don't know if I'm able to use this word anymore, artistic research, and I don't know. But yeah, I think it's also the artistic perspective is super important in research, and that's the next step. Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on talking only with the two of you, actually, because this should be a discussion round for all of us, especially for the participants, the speakers. So if you already feel like raising your hand and either posing questions or just, dropping a comment on whatever is crossing your mind after this day.
Even to the presenters, if they have like questions left to the...
Right, because the discussion rounds were so short after the modules. Feel free to do that now already. I think one of my major questions after the first module as well as the second module was how do we deal with this technological development? Because there were a lot of questions posed, how critical the approach should be to the technological development, or how much we embrace it, and how we approach that in our artistic and scientific activities. If it's problematic, like the artificial intelligence, for example, or any other kinds of technological development, I think we did not really elaborate on that question a lot, but the question was posed many times. So maybe you want to share some thoughts or on that or on any other questions.
I cannot see any hands.
We need that. Can't see, but there's one in the back. It's really hard to see because the light is so bright. In the back.
I think this got addressed pretty heavily in the second module, to again put it lightly. But we kind of spoke about education as being incredibly important with respect to artificial intelligence and with respect to just kind of like software and hardware development, period. That being said, like any sort of development can occur in a vacuum, can occur only within that discipline or only within that company or whatever that sort of space that it is. However, it doesn't have to, and so I think this interdisciplinarity, we're talking about it obviously in the context of academic institutions, but my main takeaway from this and what I tried to bring to this was a look at interdisciplinarity that almost is like a meta look at interdisciplinarity itself, if that's not too kind of like gaze into the starsy. But yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but just kind of being like, okay, we're here in order to merge art, art, culture, and technology and academia, and et cetera, so what if we actually go beyond looking at at art, culture, and technology from that top-down approach and segregating them each individually, and actually like go to whatever that thing above that person is, actually looking down and saying, okay, here are, you know, these like regions of academia and like corporate whatever. And so yeah, so basically just talking. Like it's that simple, but yeah, anyway, yeah.
Thank you. When it comes to technology, I think I see always like these two paths when it comes to solution, either to demand better policies that I find really good, that I see in the last years people are raising their voices and to demanding to these companies that they change their products. So changing policy, or the other path is what we do as individuals to better observe. And I was just thinking, because in my presentation I didn't include any like solutions. I only exposed the problem, but it was not. I didn't have so much time. But I was thinking that months ago I began like therapy, conductive cognitive therapy, and a lot of the problems that are addressed through this therapy are not thinking about the problems, but thinking about yourself, thinking about the problems. So kind of observing yourself, observing. And when it comes to technological problems and what I call this cognitive capitalism, I think we can address also that as a therapist, and like observe ourselves observing in this system. And I think that's the first step, to be aware of what we are doing, to then delineate solutions.
Yeah, definitely. That totally resonates with what Ilana just said, I think, if I got you right, Ilana. From this perspective above, like think about what we think about and how we think about what we think about. Yeah. Okay, there's another.
Yeah, I want to maybe add to that, that also in the presentations we had in this, I felt that maybe I don't know, in like how to deal with this technological advancement. I feel like there's a more central approach to somehow, not contradict, but to kind of work around it, as if technology, the thing it can't do is like have emotions or have like sensual, be sensual. So that's somehow something I feel is a way to work on it as humans. Yeah.
My question is to the moderator of the second panel, I think. But yeah, sorry, I don't remember your name. You mentioned wanting to move from interdisciplinary to transdisciplinary, and I'm wondering where those two diverge.
I think you have to differentiate between different institutions. So my point of view comes from German university system. The literary studies scholar Hans-Ulrich Gumbrecht once had painted a nice picture language-wise. He talked about Sunday morning interdisciplinarity, and he meant that scholars meet in the university and they go out of their offices and then they meet and have a coffee together and talk about popular music, or in his case, literature, and then they say thank you for your nice commentation and your nice ideas, and they go back into their offices. So this is what maybe be a first step in meeting and in networking, within networking and meeting, which, if you know German universities, is quite good in the end, because disciplines, departments, etc., faculties are, even if it's young universities, from my point of view, still very traditional, and at least if it comes to money or jobs, they are even more traditional and conservative. Fair enough, they have to do this because they want to have the jobs and the money. Transdisciplinarity, to me, is something which is totally different, because you start as a team and you stay as a team. It's not easy, it's very hard, and it needs time and it needs money. And it needs, of course, tolerance, and this is not as trivial as it sounds in science. Even in cultural studies, it's not as trivial, because in Germany, even media and communication studies don't talk to each other, because the one is coming from the languages and the other is coming from social sciences. So again, the interdisciplinarity, to describe it like this, is leaving your office and going back into your office, and the transdisciplinarity is being stuck in an office together and doing a good project. And as I have been, I mean, I left my disciplines, I studied English, communication studies, and politics. I left them and I never went back. I would never get a job there, which is great. So I'm in popular music studies. Okay, lucky enough, you know, I became this professor in popular music studies, but I love it. And I see it as a transdisciplinary research subject, and try to be very open, work on it. And second remark concerning top-down, bottom-up, whatever. I mean, students of Paderborn are here, and students of Münster, where I worked in the cultural management department and communication. I hope they know that they can come and talk, and let's talk about next re-accreditation, whatever, next modules, next topics, because we have to learn a lot, which is great about popular music studies. I can't cope with all the new technological developments, to mention this. I can't. I've got a lot to do, like we all. So I need the young scholars, the young students, the young people to help me. And I don't want to tell them that the music I listen to is better than their music. That's crap. Did I answer?
Yeah, so it's a movement from your different offices into a shared office, but still in an office.
Yeah. Do you think there are limits of transdisciplinary research?
I'm just preparing a presentation on this topic in Canberra, in Australia, where we're going to talk about this. And I'm really keen on getting different perspectives, and not only Anglo-American and European, but hopefully many different perspectives, because this is why I mentioned the German universities. I can't judge English, Indonesian, or whatever universities in Kenya. I don't know them enough, fair enough. What was the question?
If you think that there are limits to transdisciplinarity, because you know, like, I really like the approach to try to cross these boundaries and to work collaboratively and collectively and all that, but the disciplines all have their very specific traditions and methodologies, which is, you know, the most difficult part to overcome, I think. And every discipline has certain presumptions and certain, you know, I try to do a transdisciplinary project with my former colleague from music psychology, and we failed because music psychologist, or at least he knew what sad music was, and I couldn't define that, you know. For music psychologists, sometimes they set up experiments and they know this is sad and happy music and whatever, and then they set up the experiment. And I always try to get him to discuss this with me first, because you know, like, this is for me, this would be the major and most interesting question in this whole research project. What is sad music, and like, who can define that? So some, I think there are some limits to transdisciplinary research that I don't know how to, or if it really makes sense to overcome these limits.
I mean, A, you've got, as we said, you've got the perspectives of the researchers, and you can always include them, and that's what I learned from cultural studies. B, I would say in an idealistic way, there are no limits. And I would never start from a discipline, because there is something like a topic. We had so many topics today. This is great to be here and to ask not very professional questions, because all the people on stage know more about their subjects or topics or whatever than me. So idealistic wise. And the negative side, of course, is the institution. And I know where you're coming from, so I would suppose, yeah, there are limits if you're stuck in disciplines. I'm not stuck in disciplines. I know the problems because I'm working at a university and I'm responsible and I have to talk to others, and I don't want to delete the disciplines at Paderborn University. I mean, we can talk about it later maybe, but just joking. But as I'm working in transdisciplinary programs now I've been working there for 20 years or something now, it's good. And there are no limits, but of course this is a kind of a hippie attitude and privileged.
Yeah, I don't know if it's hippie, but privileged maybe to have the opportunity to try this transdisciplinary approach. And I think maybe you can it's the same for broader society or the context. It's always, you're limited if you're stuck to a discipline, you're limited if you're stuck to a nation. If you start with, it's the British and the Germans, and then the problems start. But if you start with the topic, a shared topic, a shared interest, shared starting point, you don't face these borders and limits. Probably that's the clue in the end. Yeah, maybe just bringing up the question again I posed this morning. We posed in our theme how we can be persistent in our transdisciplinary and whatever endeavors without being dogmatic ourselves. And I think this is a problem we had in the third module. How can we talk about gender problems and experimental music in the Middle East without being dogmatic?
We need, I don't know, yeah, thank you. We need new methods. That's an easy answer, I think, because that's what we have to, and we have to aim for having these new research methodologies, which can be built up via these transdisciplinary research groups, let's say, but just to make sure that it works, so the research group itself works, every single person who is part of this research group has to follow, let's say, a common rule system, in a sense that you take a step back from your own discipline and you listen to the others. I think that's another thing that, okay, I'm here to learn. Not everybody is like you. You're saying that you're there to listen to. Unfortunately, there is a tendency on the other side too that I'm here to tell you what you have to think about, and I think this kind of thing has to change. Otherwise, there won't be a step ahead.
Okay, there's a question in the back.
I would like to know, so in your field of research, how is there a interdisciplinarity between university and non-university people, like, because you are here talking about wild things and there are other people that might be interested too in these things, but of course there's a big gap, a language, like words, all this stuff. How is that in your field of work?
Actually, at my university, because I'm at Berlin University of the Arts. It's maybe different than at a normal, let's say, humanities university, because I'm also a scholar, so I'm not an artist by myself, but I work together with artists. So it's already a different atmosphere in this sense. And for example, at the German Association for Music Business and Music Culture Research, where I'm one of the leader persons of this association, we are exactly working on that most of the cases when you talk about music business or music economics, that's the first thing that it's like a negative connotation. Music business, I don't want to talk about that. On the other hand, what we are aiming for, that it's more like looking at this whole thing, so music business from the cultural perspective too, and also bringing in like actors, let's say, from outside, so people who are really like working within the scene, let's say, also managers in this sense, or artists themselves, or any other people. And we organize also different panel discussions like this, and not only scholars are there, not university professors or people who work at universities, but also really people who are working on the field, so in this sense like practitioners, and also artists. So I think that's kind of helpful in this sense. So not only in this sense, now we are here, 3 of us, all of us scholars, or like people working. You don't work at a university anymore, at least. So in this sense, you are more like a practitioner, but we work at universities. So yeah, it's a different aspect. But yeah, as mentioned, I think this kind of events can help, or bringing it. And the different language, you are completely right about it. It's that's what we always get. Scholars, I think that we don't understand you, or like, can you just like talk in a way that we also get the point? We have to work on it. And I think that's the question of the common language. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, actually, for the communication between university research and a broader public. But actually, this is why I set up this cooperation between Humboldt University and CDM Festival. This is why we are here, to have this conversation, not only in closed university seminars, but to bring researchers from all different countries and disciplines and the CDM audience to discuss together and to share ideas. Yeah.
In popular music, I mean, Jeff can maybe correct me, but in popular music studies, most of the scholars I know are either musicians themselves or producers, or be it female, male, or whatever, or journalists are a lot. So, I mean, I would like to do a study on how many ex-famous musicians now working in popular music studies. There are quite a few. So I think this transfer is automatically there. It's not like when I was studying, the gap is not as high between popular music studies and the rest of not studying or non-academic fields. A and B, as Anita said, lots of the associations are built up out of these people and are really interconnecting a lot. And Paderborn University, for example, is a typical big university in a small town. So, of course, there is a massive exchange, and they really support, the university supports the exchange, and the exchange is not the inter, they try to be trans too. So I think maybe a new generation and even the following generations will really improve this, and yes.
Okay, are there any questions from the participants, from the audience? Any comments? Anything you want to discuss at the end of the day in this round? If not, there's one? Okay.
Hi. Yeah, I think just a comment. I'm sitting here with a couple of other people, and we study over at Funkhaus, music producers, performers, and I guess it's always, coming into the school from just like a classical scene into electronic, it was interesting because it's, I guess in the classical sense in my training was a little bit more academic, and then coming into this performance electronic, it is more how can we break it, you know, and talking a lot about AI in the last couple months is instead of this having this like scared approach to it as an artist, it's like, okay, how can I break this thing to do what to, you know, help me and not have it sort of, you know, take away my job. So yeah, I just wanted to like mention something like that because kind of like in the middle where I'm trying to be like the scholar, but then also trying to break things. So yeah. Yeah.
So it was actually, thanks for your comment, I think. It was a nice comment on that you have kind of the similar issues, what we are dealing with. So it's good to know that it's not on the level of academia, but also on the level of practitioners. So thank you so much. It's like underlining in this sense our work too.
Okay, well, then I think we can close the closing discussion. Thank you, Christoph, thank you, Anita, for your participation, and thanks to all the speakers of this day, to CDM team, and of course to the audience. It was again a very inspiring kickoff of CDM's discourse program. I hope I see you all around, not only tonight at Griesmühle for the second club night, but tomorrow at 1 we continue our discourse program with a panel by Jeff Stahl, who already arrived, together with Anja Schwanhäuser and Rosa Reitzhammer and Pete Webb, and follow up with 2 other talks that day. So it would be great to see you again tomorrow. Thank you for joining.
And thank you for the organization, Ellie. I really like the job you did. Yeah.